on that. I'm really appreciative to be here because my family has gone through this numerous times, someone battling cancer. And I know that the financial help that we got from people really helped us get through, because cancer's not cheap. It actually sucks quite a bit. So one thing I need to tell you, I know this is going to be a little bit different for me, like Mr. Schiller said, because I usually talk about education, all things education, and he asked if I would come here and tell the story of my family, and I said I would. Right now I'm wishing I wouldn't have, because I'm really nervous standing up here in front of all of you. But I think what I want you to take from this today is I'm going to tell you the perspective of what cancer looks like in a home with two kids in their formative years that are athletes. And I want to share with you the impact that coaches had on their lives and our lives. Hey, Mark. Grew up with Mark, just saw him over there, sorry. Also, I have adult ADHD, so don't sweat that. And I want to share the impact that coaches had on us, because I can tell you right now, without those people in our lives, I'm not so sure where my two girls would be. So I want to introduce you to, well, first of all, hey coach, what you do matters. I think as a coach, what you do matters more than anything, because when you have athletes, you are God. Like, they look up to you more than anything. They look to you to be reaffirmed. They look to you for encouragement. They look to you to be coached. They look to you to be led. And I just have a few great stories to tell about how that happened for my girls. So we'll go ahead and get started. I always like to say, what's your deal? This is my deal. I've been an elementary school principal for 22 years. I've coached quite a few different sports along the way: football, track, fast pitch softball. But the most important role I have had is a husband, and that's my beautiful wife, Amy. And this picture was taken just a couple of years ago. Now, actually, that helmet right there is much different than the helmet sitting on that table out there. I noticed that right away. So I met Amy in 10th grade study hall. I signed up for that class because I knew that's where all the chicks were. And my last name was Hillman, her last name was Harbin. We were in alphabetical order. And so she has been my best friend since I was 16 years old. She's also a warrior. She's a great mom, and she's the absolute toughest lady I know. And Amy, when our second daughter was born, Amy was diagnosed with MS. And so she got on top of that right away. Medically, the treatment for that disease has advanced greatly, so she is doing really well with that, but it made her cancer situation a little bit tougher. So she's a cancer survivor, and again, she's just positive. Her laugh will brighten up a room. Funniest person I know. She puts up with me. She's been putting up with me for a long time. So this summer is our 30th wedding anniversary. And I know you're looking at me thinking, you're so young, Jason. Did you get married when you were 10? No, I did not. But yeah, 30 years. 30 years of life. On top of that, knowing her since I was 16, that's a pretty good life, being able to hang out with your best friend for that long. So it's great. I am a graduate of Dickinson State University. Fun fact, when I went on a recruiting trip, Lance was the one that showed me around. And so that was my first time meeting Lance. And Lance was so nice on my recruiting trip. That was one of the reasons I went there. And Lance has always been a nice guy. But then when I got there, Lance proceeded to beat the hell out of me for 2 years at practice. But he was always good. I am not surprised that Lance does this, because Lance has always been the guy to look out for other people. So we're lucky to have, those of us who have known Lance, we're lucky to have had him in our lives. So thanks, Lance. Yeah. Okay. So these are my chicks. Let's look at those pictures for a minute. And just without me saying anything, can you tell the one that gave us a run for our money? Is it obvious? By those pictures, because she does. So this is Jenna, and this is Bryn. Jenna, Bryn. It started young. That hair, we knew we were in trouble. And Bryn and Jenna, super quiet kid, really kind, hard worker. She's going to be really successful. And Bryn she's gonna take over an island someday and rule that island by force. I don't know. She is something else. But I like to show these pictures because I just always wonder how two girls in the same house that are raised by the same parents can be so different. But they are polar opposites. They're both really good girlies, but they're just different. And it really manifested in this cancer journey that we went on. Also, I like to point that out to educators. Like if you get this kid in your classroom or on your team, and then this one rolls in, and you think they're going to be similar, you're in for a rude awakening, because they're just not. They're both great kids, but you can't have that expectation. So this is what they looked like when they were younger, and that's what they look like now. So Brittany outgrew Jenna. They're beautiful girls. And then this is our family as a whole right here. This is one of our recent pictures. This guy and this guy have an agreement. I don't mess with him. He doesn't mess with me. So he doesn't like me. He only loves Amy, which is, I think that's how most of the people in our lives are. Amy's much more popular than I am. So in order for me to get to how coaches impacted us, I'm going to have to tell a couple of stories about the journey we went through. And the first one I want to talk about is this one. So this is Jenna as a sixth grader. We had just moved from Columbus, Ohio, back to Powell, Wyoming, and Jenna was starting at sixth grade. Now, at this point in Jenna's life, she was really, really quiet. She is a wallflower. She did not want to call attention to herself ever. And I remember one of her teachers in fifth grade in Ohio, it was the parent-teacher conferences in the spring, and she told me, I haven't heard Jenna talk all year. And my first thought was, have you talked to her? Sit down and say hi to her. She'll talk to you, but she's not going to jump up and answer questions. But it was getting to the point where, like, she was so socially nervous that she didn't want to do things. And Amy and I were really, really worried about her. So when we moved to Powell, we thought, well, Powell's our hometown. I was born and raised in Powell. Amy moved there in the third grade. Like I said, I picked her up in the 10th grade and never let her go. And Jenna was starting sixth grade at Powell Middle School. Well, she started school, and at Powell Middle School, first period was PE. And Jenna started having, like the first couple weeks of school, all of a sudden Jenna started having sore throats. And then after first period, they would magically go away. Because Jenna loves school. She's a gifted writer. She's a math nerd. Like she recopies chapters just for fun. Like that's the kind of kid she is. But she was not wanting to go to school for the first time. So all of a sudden she's getting these illnesses. She doesn't want to go to school. And then in about October, that went away. And Jenna started to like school again. And the reason that she started to like school is because she met her favorite teacher of all time. Her favorite teacher of all time is Mrs. Meeker. So I told you about Jenna. I told you what she loves. She did not like PE. They were playing volleyball. That's a team sport. Jenna didn't want to mess up. She didn't want other kids mad at her. So she wanted nothing to do with that. But she met Mrs. Meeker and things got better. So knowing what you know about Jenna, just at your table, what subject do you think Mrs. Meeker taught? And if you know Mrs. Meeker, don't cheat. What do you think? Talk at your table really quick.
mean, what is she like the most?
Writing and math.
What do we think, you guys?
English.
Yeah, I get PE. I get PE a lot. I get writing because Jenna loves writing. I get math because Jenna loves math.
Art.
Mrs. Meeker taught PE.
Oh.
She's a PE teacher. So think about that for a minute. The subject that Jenna hated the most had the teacher that she loved the most. And because of that, Jenna started to want to go to school. And what happened was, that summer, Mrs. Meeker had her knee replaced. And she missed the first month of school recovering. But when she got back, that's when Jenna's life changed. So what happened is Jenna, they were doing the presidential fitness, and Jenna had to run the mile. And she had a sore throat the day that the class ran the mile. So when she got back, Mrs. Meeker was back, and she had to make up the mile. And Jenna conned another girl into running it, and Mrs. Meeker said, "Oh no, kid, I'm going to do it with you." So Mrs. Meeker, Coach Meeker, drove her scooter around the track for 4 laps, and Jenna jogged by her. And it was the slowest mile in Howell Middle School history. But it was the most important mile in Jenna's life. Because that connection that Coach Meeker made with Jenna helped us through every hard thing that we went through. It helped Jenna through every hard thing we went through. It made Jenna want to go to school again. It gave her someone to talk to. The impact of a coach is so important. So much so that Coach Meeker was the track coach at the middle school. And Jenna wasn't an athletic kid. So there's no way that Jenna's going to go out for a sport. Absolutely not. We're going to sit at home, we're going to read Harry Potter. Well, Coach Meeker said, "Hey, I'm the track coach. Why don't you come out for track?" So Jenna said, "Okay, I will." Not because she wanted to do track, but she wanted to spend more time with Mrs. Meeker. And this is what happened because Coach Meeker talked Jenna into going out for track. It turns out little Jenna was pretty fast. And Coach Meeker coached her through middle school, and then in high school, Jenna kept working. She ended up being a state champion in the 100 and the 200. Anchored relays. She was on a team that had 2 state championships. And there's Coach Meeker right there, and Jenna when she was in middle school. And all through that, at the finish line, at the state meet, Mrs. Meeker's in the stands going crazy like that's her own kid. Mrs. Meeker retired. She still followed Jenna. She still texted her. An amazing person. And here's the thing about Coach Meeker. Jenna wasn't the only kid she did that for. It wasn't the only kid that she did that for. That impacted our family so much. And I'm gonna come back to that. But I just want you to know that as an educator, and I think of this as a principal too. Like, I know I have kids that don't like to come to school, but I try to make sure they like to see me. And I give them a lot of love. I try to learn every kid's name. My school is small. I try to learn every kid's name. I try to greet them. If I don't know their name, they're sweetie or buddy. Although I will tell you this, I help coach the indoor track team at Paul High School. I volunteer. And sometimes, since I work with 5-year-olds mostly, I found that freshman girls and boys don't like to be called sweetie. Don't do that. It'll slip, then I'll say, "I'm sorry, I work with 5-year-olds. I don't mean it. Don't call the cops." Like, I don't mean it. Don't mean it. So Coach Meeker, I love her to death. Also, this is funny. I had Coach Meeker as a 6th grader, and so did Amy. And so Jenna would come home and say, "Hey, Dad, Coach Meeker talks a lot about Mom, but she doesn't talk about you that much. Do you think she remembers you?" Yeah, I'm pretty sure she does. And then she's told Jenna some stories over time. So that's my Jenna and Coach Meeker story. Just an amazing person. So if we get into some of the, I guess, why we're here is to talk about the impact on these 2 girls and cancer. So usually I don't say "and" very that much, but I'm nervous. I'm nervous to talk about this. This is hard. Putting this together with my family was therapeutic, but there were a lot of tears just putting this together. So So Jenna and Brittany's introduction to cancer was Papa. And so my dad was diagnosed with cancer when we were living in Ohio. And Mom and Dad needed help. So a job came open at Powell. I wanted to raise my girls in Powell, and we came back. And I just thought, every time that I needed my dad, he came. So when he needed me, I wanted to come. So we came home, and my dad fought this cancer. It spread throughout his body. He fought it for a couple of years, and it was really hard because we just watched him slowly die. And he was so ornery that, he's just that generation, he was just tough. Like he just fought so hard. He fought so hard a lot because he loved his grandkids so much. Like I remember when we moved home, he told me, my goal is to see my grandkids graduate. And he didn't make it, but man, he tried. Also, I want to point out, see those fingers? I can't tell you how many times I got thumped in the head by those fingers. He was that kind of dad. So, and then I always get a kick out of it because you hear stories about, how dads are different when they're grandpas. I promise you, this did not happen when I was a kid. When I was a kid, there was none of this. But I wanted to show you these pictures because that's just how close he was with the girls. So like I see my dad doing this, and I see my dad, and this is the same man. Like, one, you've heard that saying, you can't hurt my feelings because I held the flashlight for my dad. I held the flashlight for my dad. And also, like this is my dad, one of his favorite, I can't tell you how many times he told me this when I was growing up. Jason, I'm not sure you're smart enough to pour piss out of a boot. I still don't know what that means. So I guess I'm not smart enough. Like I remember thinking as a kid, like, who's pissing in their boot? But I don't know why he would say that to me because I was such an intelligent little guy. But Jenna, he loved all of his grandkids, but for some reason he and Jenna formed this really special bond. And so this was hard. It was hard on all of us, but it was especially hard on Jenna. And when we were putting this together as a family, we started to talk about the end. And one of the things that Bryn remembered that I didn't remember is, so Dad ended up in hospice just for a few days. He just went to hospice and it didn't last very long, and he was really incoherent when he was there. And Bryn, we were talking in the kitchen the other day, and Bryn said to me, do you remember when Papa said he wasn't ready to die? I don't remember that, but she did. And she said, he said that, and then we all started to cry. But it's funny the things that you remember and the things that you don't when you're in a situation like that. But that stuck out in Bryn's. And I remember going over to hospice, and we had talked about family members that had passed away, and then I tried to prep the girls because it went like this was a long time for Dad, but at the end everything went fast. Like he went from being coherent to not. So I tried to prep Jenna to say, listen, and Bryn, Papa might not know who we are. Like that's where we're at. Sorry. Fun fact, so back in like 1998, I was at a works thing with Tim in the back, and Tim, raise your hand. Tim started to cry, and I had to take over. I told Tim today, if it happens to me, be ready to come up and grab the mic. So, thank you. So I told him, and Jenna's heart just sunk. She said, he might not know who we are. He won't know us. Just, Papa always knew you, but right now he might not. So we get around the bed, and Dad opens his eyes, and we're just there. You don't know what to do, but we're just there. And Dad looks up, he opens his eyes and he looks around and he says, I remember even how he said it, I just don't know. I just don't know you guys. And he looked at all of us. And then I was standing here and Jenna was standing at the other side. And, hey Mike, sorry. And I looked at Jenna, and my dad looked at Jenna, and he said, Jenna, Marcin, this is bullshit, let's go home. And Jenna's face lit up, and that was the last thing I remember my dad saying. And I'm glad that's the last thing I remember my dad saying. That made Jenna's day, and she knew, and so that was hard stuff. So that's where it started. Dad passed away on February 4th, and it was hard. We lost a good friend, we lost a good dad, and Jenna and Bryn lost their papa. So then, 5 months later, we get this news. So we have a fun day planned to go to Billings, Montana. We live about 8 miles from Billings, and that's where we go shopping. So Amy had an appointment to get a mammogram, and we were going to do what everybody does when you're from Powell and you go to Billings. You go up there for the doctor's appointment, and then you spend the day spending all the money that you don't have on two girls that are spoiled rotten. So we went to the doctor, and it just went from bad to worse. Apparently something was going on where when Amy went in and got the exam, the doctor said, this is not good. So they did the mammogram, had to do a biopsy, got news, like we're sure this is cancer. This is what's happening. This picture is very significant because it goes back to the mind of a kid. So we were talking about this. Bryn is 18 years old now. We were talking about this when I was putting this together, and she said, Dad, I have a picture of Mom that day. I said, what do you mean you have a picture of Mom that day? She said, I took a picture of Mom while we were sitting in the hospital sitting at the doctor's waiting for her appointment because I thought she looked so pretty. Now, that was 6 years ago, and immediately when we were talking about this, Bryn knew she had that picture and why she took it. I said, why did you save it? She said, I was afraid she wouldn't look like that again. She kept it. So that's what was going through Brynny's mind through some of this stuff. So we get this news, and we're walking out of the hospital. We know that this is the start of something, but we don't know what it is. So we leave the hospital. We're just kind of in shock, and we think, well, let's go to Starbucks, because that's what you do. So this is what I remember. So we drive to Starbucks, we go through the drive-thru, we all get coffees, whatever we want to get. Amy gets her coffee, and we're doing okay. We're rather stoic up until now. Amy gets her coffee, and she drops it in the truck. And then she just starts to sob. And then the girls start to sob. Then I start to sob. Because we don't know what's going to happen. And this is a brand new truck. I gotta say stupid jokes to get through it. But it was a new truck, and it did bother me a little bit. I should have been a little more courteous during this time. So we get through that piece. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know we're going to find some things out. And so this is what Jenna thought, or this is what we knew, what my girls knew about cancer. Like, this is all they knew at this point. Papa just died from it. Mom has it. That's what we knew. But we knew it was breast cancer. And we know from watching TV that breast cancer is the best kind of cancer to get, because that's what they tell us. So Jenna had this question, because in Jenna's mind, at the age she was, this was a big worry. Is Mom going to lose her hair? Because that's what we knew. You lose your hair, but then you can get better. That was her biggest question. And we had to say, yes, she is. But we're going to find out some other things. So some things that we found out. The first thing that Amy had to do, and again, I'm going to tie this back to you as coaches, but you need to know the story first. The first thing we had to do is lymph node surgery. And I say we because Amy's the warrior, but we were with her. So she had to have lymph node surgery because you have to find out. And I'm not a doctor either, so don't take any medical advice from me. This is how we remembered it. Had to find out if it spread. And hopefully it didn't. Hopefully it didn't. But what we found out was it did. When that came back positive, that it had moved from a tumor to the lymph nodes in her armpit, I could tell by the doctor's reactions that we were in trouble because things happened fast. We went from a plan to take care of this to we're going to take care of this tomorrow. So the first thing that she had to do was have a mastectomy. And we learned something there. There's a T in that word. That's a joke. Did you know there's a T in that word? Sorry, I'm trying not to cry, so I'm going to throw some jokes. What the doctors told us is, you're going to have a double mastectomy because we don't want this to spread. But we can only do one right now because it will take you too long to heal from two, and we have to start this treatment right away. We have to start this treatment right away. So she had a mastectomy, and then we found out 21 weeks of chemo was coming. And 4 of those weeks, they said it was double chemo. And we didn't know what that was, but we should have found out. This was really hard because Amy, her immune system is already really suppressed because she has MS. So that chemo knocked her off of her feet. I can remember taking her to treatment and bringing her home and having, this is one of those vivid memories for me. The girls are doing their best to help and be positive, we all are, and I remember sitting on the edge of our bed after I got Amy home from treatment, and she just looked at me, and she said, "What's going to happen to me, Jason?" And I didn't know. But of course, I told her, you're going to be fine. Because whatever's going to happen to you, we're going to be with you. And she was just so sick through that, and it was so scary. It wasn't like TV, damn it. It was different. So we got through that. And then she got this thing called a Neulasta injector. If anyone ever offers you a Neulasta injector, tell them no. You do not want it. That's a joke too. Like, you have to have it if you have cancer, but just say like one day out of the blue, a kid asks you, "Hey, you want some Neulasta?" Tell them no. So this is a drug that hooked to her arm. And after she would have the double chemo, this was supposed to raise her blood cell count so it's not so dangerously low so she wouldn't get sick. But she reacted to that so poorly, it just made her sicker. So she would have this chemo, and then she would have to be in bed for a couple of days. And the thing was, like, there's an end to it, but it didn't seem like there was an end to it because you're just in the moment. And we're still in shock. The girls and I and Amy are still in shock because this is happening. Like, cancer doesn't happen to you until it does. Like, your family doesn't go through something like this until you go through it. You just get blindsided by it. So after the chemo, she had to have 38 sessions of radiation. And what that looked like for her, I remember going in, and she had to. The first thing they did was give her tattoos around where the cancer was and where the breast that she had removed. And they're not pretty tattoos. They're more like prison tats. Like, they're just dots. So they could line the machine up. And then 38 times, basically, what these ladies go through, they go get roasted. And they just burn everything in there, so it kills it. So if there's any cancer cells in there, anything, it just kills it. I remember Amy it looked like it was raw. Like it was just sunburned. And she was so tough. She was so tough. And then after all that, we got to have the other mastectomy. And what I realized, like, for these ladies that have breast cancer, essentially what they do is they mutilate their bodies so they can survive. They literally get parts cut off so they can survive. That's how tough they are. And then when that fun was all done, she got to take this hormone blocker because her cancer was hormone receptive. And so they had to take that. She had to take that so the cancer wouldn't come back because of hormones. She had to take that for 5 years. And then once she had that for 5 years, she was out of the woods. Sort of. the chances of the cancer coming back are dropped significantly after 5 years. But what that does is that pushed her into menopause. So she had to go through all of that fun stuff right after all of this treatment. So we went from, is mom gonna lose her hair, to is mom gonna die? Because we had just seen all of this stuff and how bad it beat Amy down. And so we learned right away that when we think about breast cancer, we think about awesome stuff like, and this is, I'm not downplaying this because this is great because it raises awareness and it raises money and that helps with treatment. But I mean, when we knew about breast cancer, we had our Panther girls, they wore pink. You know, the NFL does a great job of it, pink ribbons in the hair. This is what we knew about breast cancer. This is what it looked like to us. But this is what it looked like to us then. This is what our house was like. Girls pretty close to mom. Mom not feeling well, puke bucket. That's what it looked like. In my girls' formative years, they watched their their grandpa die, and then they watched Amy go through this. This is what it looks like. This is the day that she got the chemo port, and this is into the devil chemo. Doesn't even look like her. Wasn't easy. Wasn't easy for her. Wasn't easy for the girls. So, isn't that a great picture? So we went through that through the holiday season. We're just coming off of Dad passing away, and then we got to Amy's birthday, Amy's 44th birthday. And so navigating this through the girls' formative years, we had some more illnesses. Like this almost seems like a Saturday Night Live skit, but it's not. So during this time, poor girls, I got an infection in my stomach, and I had to go to the hospital. I had to stay in the hospital. I ended up having a surgery to have part of my colon removed, and my girls were worried about that. Like, is dad gonna die? No, I'm not going to. But it was scary. And then my mother had moved up to Billings, Montana, to live with my sister, and we would go visit her. This is right during this time frame. We go back a bit. I guess Billings is jinxed because we go back to Billings to visit. I remember we were at Target, and then we went to my sister's house to see my mom because she was living with my sister, and my mom was dead on the living room floor. My sister was there. We walk in. Grandma's dead. I didn't even know what to do at that point. But when my girls' little brains were forming, and when they were going through these formative years, this is what they did. Now, you have kids on your teams, you have kids in your classes that are going through something like this. And it's important that we know who they are, because you can make a difference for them. You can make a difference for them. Because my girls, through this time, they were afraid, there were a lot of tears, we were just trying to build each other up. This one got hit the hardest. They're so different. She's so quiet, she's so not quiet. You never know what she's thinking. There was a period of time where I knew every thought in that kid's head. That scared me to death. So it hit her the hardest. So germs, what we knew about mom and all this crappy stuff that had been happening to our family is we can't get sick. We can't get sick. So Bryn, she was an anxious mess. She would do things like, she washed her hands till they bled. She would leave class to wash her hands. She would leave basketball practice to wash her hands because she realized she had been touching the basketball. Other kids have been touching the basketball. Other kids have germs. I don't want to take those germs home to my mom. She told me when we were doing this, I used to hold my breath around food that mom was going to eat because I didn't want to get germs on. That's what Brittany's little brain was doing. Their social lives, after all of this, pretty much went away. Because their time was taken up dealing with these things and they also didn't want to leave their mom. It brought us closer as a family, but the girls' friend groups, they literally disappeared during middle school and the beginning of their freshman year. They literally disappeared. Whoops, I want to get that here. So, another thing Bryn would do is she was just so anxious. She would dig her fingernails, like when she was standing at practice, she would dig her fingernails into her fingers and make them bleed. And then she just chewed all of her fingernails off. And so her little mind was spinning so hard. Her fight or flight response was on all the time because she was just so anxious. She was just so anxious. So when she was a freshman, also, another fun fact, Bryn had a pars defect. Do you know what that is? One of her vertebrae was cracked. She did that because the kid is just sporty sport, like always sports. So she was recovering from that a little bit, so she had to take some time off from sports. So the reason I wanted to tell you that is because when she was a freshman in volleyball, her freshman volleyball coach came up to us and said, "Hey, Bryn is not the same." And I knew this lady knew what she was talking about because she had coached Bryn from 4th grade to freshman. When the freshman job came open, she got it, and she knew Bryn really well. And she said, she seems a little bit thin. She seems really anxious, and she's not nearly as explosive as she used to be, meaning she's not jumping like what she used to be able to do. Because Bryn she was a gymnast. The kid could kip from her back. Like I can't do that. She could stand flat-footed and do a backflip. Like she was that athletic, but she wasn't anymore. And Amy and I thought, well, okay, so that's because of her back. Well, what came to be with Brinny is that this is Bryn as a freshman in high school. So when this part's hard, Bryn started to think about nutrition. Some foods cause cancer. So right now we have a kid who's been through all of this. She's watching her mom. She's seen all that. She doesn't want to bring germs home to mom, but she also doesn't want to get cancer too. She doesn't want to die. Some foods cause cancer, so I'm really going to restrict the foods I eat because I'm scared to get that. And I asked her when we were making this, why do you think you really did that? And she told me, as an 18-year-old, Dad, I think it was something I could control. It was something that I could control. As an 8th grader, Brittany was 5'7" and 130 pounds. As a freshman in high school, she was 5'7", 99 pounds. She had done that to herself. Okay, this is the only coaching advice I'm going to give you, just because I saw it with my own daughter. If you have a kid, and this is why it's important to know what kids are going through, but if you have a kid that you know has gone through something like this, you have to coach the kid and not the sport. What I mean by that is, if you get after this kid, if we're raising our voice at this kid and not following up, you're going to lose that kid because they're so anxious. She was so anxious that immediately if she thought someone was upset with her, her fight or flight kicked in and she didn't hear the next 3 things out of your mouth. She just couldn't do it. Be very aware of that, like what these kids are going through, because what happened with Bryn was she decided, I don't even know if it was a conscious decision, but I know that she was anxious. She was anxious to be on team sports. She was a good little volleyball player, a good little basketball player, but she decided, I'm done with those. I'm not doing those anymore. So what she did was she restricted her food and then she worked out constantly because working out is healthy, right? She wanted to be healthy. And what she finally ended up being diagnosed with was this. So now we have Amy fighting to get better, and we have Jenna being quiet, and we have Bryn getting real skinny. That's what we had in our house. And so Brittany decided that I'm not going to play volleyball, I'm not going to play basketball anymore. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run track. And I'm going to run long distance. And I'm thinking, that's exactly what you want your anorexic kid to do. Let's run long distance and burn some more calories, kiddo. But that's what she wanted to do. And I was worried about it, and I was worried about it. But I'm so thankful she did it. Now, this has impacted Bryn's athletic career so much, because once you restrict like that and you get down, we had Bryn in counseling as soon as we got the hand washing, like as soon as we noticed those are, so like we were on top of this, but it takes a long time to overcome this. Her body was beaten down. You see how thin she is there. So she started to run. Brittany's a good athlete. She's a good little runner. All of a sudden she starts to get stress fractures, because that's what happens when you don't feed your body and you ask so much of it. So she decides she's going to switch. She battles these things. And I can tell you right now, if she wouldn't have, I don't know where she would be, because these two ladies, Coach MacArthur and Ashley Hildebrand, I don't want to be dramatic in saying that they saved Bryn's life, but they changed the quality of her life. Because they saw Bryn not as an athlete, but as a human who needed help. They recognized it right away. They talked to Bryn about it. Both of them sat Bryn down and said, if you want to run, we want you to run. Bryn wasn't the best runner. She didn't have to be for these two ladies. But they treated her like she was. They sat her down. They told Bryn. We had visited with the coaches. They told Bryn, we know what's happening. They acknowledged that they knew what's happening. They were going to help her get through it. So they were always positive with Bryn. They always encouraged Bryn. Didn't matter if she was first or last. Kid, we're happy you're here. We love you very much. Ashley went to the extent of researching dietitians, and she found a dietitian that was an ex-Division I runner, I think at Alabama, and she gave Bryn that information. And since, well, first of all, Bryn's going to believe whatever Tracy and Ashley tell her, because they're coaches. Nobody knows anything but a coach in Bryn's world. Like, that's what she believes. This lady was a Division I runner, so she's also a genius. And Bryn got connected with her. And because of that, Bryn got like a 15-month diet plan from this runner. We're all faster now because we followed that diet plan. I don't like it very much, but she got that, and Bryn, over the course of time, changed her body. Now, finally, as a senior in indoor track, she had her first season where she was healthy and ran the whole season. And she ran the best times ever. I was so proud of her. But she wouldn't have done that without Tracy and Ashley. And I tell Tracy and Ashley this too, we love them. Like, as a family, we just love them. Bryn didn't get to run at state cross country because she was injured. She missed too many meets, and then her times weren't there at the end of the year. And Ashley and Tracy took her anyway. She didn't get to run because it wouldn't be fair to take someone else's spot, but they took her. And we just appreciated that so much. That impact, and Bryn has them. Bryn can go to them. Bryn talks to them all the time. Without those coaches, without Coach Meeker, without Tracy, without Ashley, I don't know where our kids would be. I don't know where they would be. This is where they are now. So Jenna is a sophomore at Rocky in Billings. She decided to go to school at Rocky Mountain College. Ralston, Wyoming is 5 miles out of Powell. If Ralston, Wyoming had a track team, that's where she would have gone to college, because she did not want to go far away. She wanted to be close to her mom. And Bryn just signed a letter of intent to run at Black Hills State. Now, caveat, Bryn is also a baker. And she runs her own bakery out of our home. And I had to bargain with her to tell this story. She told me I could tell her story if I also included that is her Instagram handle. So if you feel the urge, find that and just give her one follow so she knows that Dad followed through. She does some amazing things. So we are good now. My girls are good. They're still pretty reserved. They still spend a lot of time at home, but they are good. Like, we made it through this. We made it through this, one, because Amy's so dang tough. Two, Amy and I love each other very much, and we provided a really stable as we could, environment for our girls. Think about kids that go through something like this that don't have that, because it was hard for them. Kids that have that still need you. Kids that don't have that really, really need you. Really, really need you. And then these are some quotes I just asked the girls. Like, okay, so like, if you could tell a coach something when you were going through this or growing up, what would you tell them? And these are some of the things that they said. Bryn, give me grace if I was distracted. It was hard to focus all the time. She's worried about germs more than she's worried about competing. She's worried about that. Another thing, Jenna said, talk to me and tell me they knew I was going through something hard. Let me know they cared about me more than just a player. Because both of these girls would run through a wall for a coach. They absolutely would. But at that point in their life, they needed that extra support. Notice if I become withdrawn or isolated myself. Notice if I wasn't myself. They realized what happened to their social lives. They really withdrew. And then Bryn, be nice. Like, just so black and white. Be nice, dude. Be nice. Say you understand, but don't tell me scary stories about cancer. Because what happens out of the goodness of people's heart, they try to tell you their story about what happened, and sometimes those don't have happy endings. Bryn already had scary enough stories. She didn't need any more. Don't tell them scary stories. And then this picture was taken at the indoor state track meet just a couple of weeks ago in Gillette, the Wyoming Indoor State Track Meet. And I want to share this with you because it's the most recent picture I have of the girls, but it's also a milestone too. So Amy is 5 years out from cancer. She doesn't have to take the hormone blocker. But another scare for us and the kids was the hormone blocker did such a great job. It pushed her into menopause, but then when she went off of it, it took her out of menopause. And she has to go through menopause for real again. It also wrecked her uterus. So this is Amy 6 weeks out of a hysterectomy, a complete hysterectomy that was cancer related. So even 6 years later, the girls are still dealing with the ramifications of Amy being sick. And this is Amy all the time. Like, she's got a smile on her face and she loves her girls. So I guess I want to bring that back to the foundation of this. We're still paying for cancer. And any help that families can get monetarily is huge. Well, I would give all the money in the world to have coaches like Ashley, coaches like Mrs. Meeker, coaches like Mrs. MacArthur take care of my girls. Because that's worth more than anything. This is a fun fact too. I'm gonna end on this one. So Bryn is doing so well. She'd kill me. Better not record this for Mr. Shea. So again, I know every thought that she has. And so when you restrict yourself as a female, your female stuff stops working. Bryn didn't have a period for 4 years. Like, she started her period in 8th grade and then she just didn't have it anymore. About 3 weeks ago, I'm at work. My phone tings. I'm in a meeting, and I look at it. It's Bryn. Hey, Dad, I got my period. Help me. Thanks, Bryn. Thanks for the update, sis. Actually, Coach Haney, he had Bryn in class, and he can attest. That's Bryn, isn't it? Yeah, that's Bryn. So, I just want to thank you for listening to this story. I hope it impacted you. I hope it gets you to think about, okay, what kids do we have? What are they going through? What do they need from me? Aside from learning how to play this game, what do they need from me? How can I help them so maybe they don't go through all of the stuff that we went through? That was my point today. So thank you very much. Thank you for letting me share my story. I feel like I need like a psychiatrist couch up here. I just kind of got there. But thank you very much, and I'll be seeing you around for the rest of the conference. Thank you.